I do have some slides I will use, but really we will, we will depart from the slides as the questions come in, and as we hear from all of you as well. Please feel free to keep posting as we go through this. In my work in working with universities has been to help people figure out how to use various kinds of technology. And one of the things that we have certainly learned is that it can be difficult for universities and colleges to understand how to use these tools. And so let me just share my slides. Just give me 1 second, please. Here we go. Sorry. All right. So I call it this AI moment as we deal with AI and try to understand what it does. I just want to give you a little bit of background. I've been teaching technology at universities and colleges for a long time now. I used to do this when I had hair back in 98 is the oldest picture I could find of myself teaching, but I've been teaching since 93. And computers used to look like that. And I used to look like that. Now, of course, I look very different, and so does the world around us. One of the things that has been consistent in my working with professors, both as a faculty member myself, as well as an administrator, has been working on how to introduce the right technology at the right time for the professors and the students. And that hasn't always been easy. I still remember at Columbia, there was no use of email across the university till one of our deans at Columbia's journalism school announced one gathering like this after summer break that we are moving entirely to email as the language of the school, as a communication tool for the entire school. And faculty members were kind of fainting right and left because they were not used to using email in the journalism school. In computer science and other places, of course, they were using it. So when and how technology is introduced makes a big difference in how we can be successful, as you know. So I'm going to pause here and just ask Xiao to tell us a little bit about some of the resources that you already have at Hunter, several different things that she can quickly tell us about.
Absolutely. So I am now sharing my screen, and the first thing you see here is a Padlet. It's a Padlet that collects some curated resources. We've been very, very choosy and trying not to put everything that is out there. So here's what we have. We have on the top some resources for Centers for Teaching and Learning. So 4 on the top, one of them is actually from our sister college, Brook. And this is a good way to start thinking about generative AI and getting some advice. And so this is a good way to start thinking about it. We also have addressing the specific issue of addressing it in the syllabus. I know that was one of the questions that came up. And so in our next set of resources, this is all about how to address it in the syllabus. The first link here actually goes to a Google Doc that has a variety of ideas from different colleges and different professors. We also have one with samples from Hunter professors, and if you click on this link, it takes you to this Padlet that has a collection of resources from your own colleagues, from Jack, from Cecil, from Gina, and from Julie. These are statements that they have either written themselves or actually worked on with their own students. Then we have, going down, some ideas about redesigning writing assignments. And then also some of the events that we have that CERT has presented with your own colleagues again, Jack and Cecil and Sal and Marina and Laura. They have presented throughout this last year, 2023. And some of them are recordings. And so if you actually click on here, it takes you to the YouTube video that has the recording. I'll keep on going down a little bit and say that these are some webinars of the podcast that we have curated. And then we have some resources on writing prompts. Okay, and I'll let you explore these. Just know that this does not have everything, and we've been very choosy in what we've collected. One more thing that we have here is actually basically a journey. Okay, this is basically a little timeline that we put together. We actually presented this at the CUNY IT conference in December. And here we have basically our journey from spring 23, the events that we have done, and then some of your thoughts that we've collected from those events. So I'll scroll slowly just to let you see that's what we did in the spring. This is what we did in the fall. And I think we are at the point where we have gone a little bit beyond panic and curiosity, and we're now actually integrating AI into our courses and thinking about other tools besides the text-based tools. You'll notice that we also had some brainstorm hours. And so in addition to the CERT lunchtime seminars, the Center for Online Learning has been doing these brainstorm hours, which were basically not presentations, but discussions. So we invited everybody to come and talk. It was more of an open space. And so we're going to continue doing that in the upcoming semester. And so here is the page for the Center for Online Learning EdTech Brainstorm Hours, where you can sign up for the sessions. These are 1-hour sessions on a Monday, actually the first Monday of every month. And we have registration links and also resources after the session is over. Okay, so I will stop here. And let's continue.
Thank you very much. That was very useful. I'm sure your colleagues will be diving into it. The links have been put in the chat, so folks, please go in there and save the 2 links to those. The journey is especially so important. The various departments and faculty and the schools that I've been dealing with, almost none have had this many sets of resources so easily available, and the continuing brainstorming sessions. So I encourage all of you to please participate as much as you can. And it just shows you that this is something that Hunter has taken very seriously now for a year. And that's a great thing for you as faculty. One of the questions that came up from Peter Dudek is that email increased workload, will AI? And I think that's a really interesting question, because it's absolutely true that if you look at how technology was introduced in universities, when email, and then if you look at the mobile devices, right? In both those landmark moments, we've seen how email became something that requires so much of our time, is a time suck for faculty. Student interaction went up, of course, but also in ways that we may not have always welcomed, or the times at which we wanted it. And as you know, in other countries, there is a different approach to email, where they will say, for example, that in universities, they will have faculty are not expected to answer email after hours or on weekends. That's just not the case in America, as we know, both in the workplace as well as in colleges. And same thing happened when BlackBerry and other mobile devices came along. We as employees asked for these tools, and what they did was take away from our own time, our family time, and other ways in which we would be connecting with the world. So as we know, with all technology, there are advantages, but also issues that we have to deal with. And as we will see, those policies and other ways of approaching this are going to make a big difference in our being able to stay ahead of it. And I think especially as professors who are already overwhelmed with our demands from students, as well as our own research, service, other things, the more we can get a handle on it, the more educated we can be, then we can use these tools in better ways. As I've been thinking about this topic of AI, one of the things that has often come up is, why has it been unleashed like this? Are there ways in which it could be controlled? It could be rolled back. Are there ways to do this? And that got me thinking about another piece of technology that we have obviously had lots of issues with, and that issue is with guns. And Martin Amis, the novelist, who many of you know, had this really interesting way to think about this. He said, bullets cannot be recalled, they cannot be uninvented, but they can be taken out of the gun. And that is a great way for us to look at how we deal with ChatGPT and all the other tools that are out there. What are guardrails, fences, ways in which we control the situation rather than having the technology control us? We have seen this, and especially as a journalist myself, in my field of journalism, we saw how the internet coming and news being available for free, what that has done to American newspapers and the American news industry. So similarly, we want to make sure that this era of technology, we as faculty members have more control and ways to be on top of this as much as possible. I wanted to show you this Hechinger report headline: "From admissions to teaching to grading, AI is infiltrating higher education. Colleges' use of technology grows, so do questions of bias and accuracy." This headline won't surprise you. The fact that the Hechinger, which does a lot of coverage around technology and education and inequality and innovation, wrote about AI won't be surprising to you. But what might surprise you is the date. If you can see on that last line next to the name of the author, Derek Newton, it was April 26, 2021. So it shows you that AI has been around. It's just not something that we have been necessarily focused on. Again, there are colleagues here who are very much leading the way in using AI, but many of us who are in other fields may not have been thinking about this, certainly not from 2021. It was really, things changed, as you know, in the last year. There's been some look at how AI has been deployed and used in colleges. I wanted to call out one particular study, which is a 2023 Faculty Pulse study that says, what are policies regarding the use of AI writing tools like ChatGPT? How are they being made? What is being done? And as you can see, that it isn't always uniform how it's being used, and whether it's being done at the institutional level, departmental level, course level, and where people are thinking about this is something that I think is interesting. I want to just pause here, and maybe Julie or Nicole can talk for a minute about how policy is set and where we are with policy for Hunter. What are things that we as faculty should be keeping in mind?
I think, Julie, I don't know if you want to respond to that question about what's going on right now related to policy, or you would prefer that I do that?
I'd be happy to follow up. And also, I think we did also in one of our in our fall 2023 pre-semester session, we hosted, and I'm sorry for just calling you out, but we hosted one of our resident experts, the resident expert at Hunter, Jack Kennisburg, who also shared about the conversations going on at CUNY in thinking about revising the statement about academic integrity. And as you all know, on any of our syllabi is actually that statement by the Hunter Senate that clearly states what academic integrity means, what are violations of that principle. And I think the conversation that started in CUNY and is happening also at Hunter, and what we are thinking about when we are thinking about our own classrooms, is really about, well, this statement really talks about people, and AI is not a person. And so how do we make that fit in that conversation? There is indeed, you can go back to the recording that we have from fall 2023, where actually you can go to the specific section where Jack talks about that discussion, starting in CUNY and going to the other hunters. But one big takeaway really was there that it is intended to be a policy where indeed the faculty member at the end of the day who knows the field and where what is most relevant for their discipline really can work with that policy as they see fit.
Okay, thank you. And I see that there's a link to the ISER channel with where you can watch the videos. Also point out that Anthony Picciano is pointing out 2 articles on AI in higher education in 2021 and 2019. Artificial intelligence in the academy's loss of purpose. So please check out both those links as well. So one of the questions that comes up when you talk to faculty members is that how are students using these tools? And in every survey that's been done, students are ahead of most faculty in use of ChatGPT. They're starting their work there. They are that's their first iteration of their work. And even when there are policy restrictions, there are students who continue to use these tools. So in that same survey here, you can see student likelihood continue to use AI writing tools despite restrictions. You can see how in the spring, the students were still kind of learning these tools, but they really are activated to use them. And so that's why I think one of my takeaways is that how important the descriptions in the syllabi are. And as you've seen already, there are a couple of ways in which you can decide what to put on the syllabi. And some examples are there in those Padlets. And so if we have time, we can even visit them and just look at them more closely together, because I think that will help. In terms of how people look at AI, I remember seeing this meme about summer and the heat in the world, and how when Bart Simpson complains it's the hottest summer of his life, his father says, you mean it's the coldest summer of the rest of your life. And same thing with ChatGPT. If you think it's really scary, remember, this is the least scary, least powerful, least useful, least ubiquitous, least available it will ever be. And that's why this is the right opportunity for faculty to get ahead of these tools. The students are reacting to it, are jumping on it, but not always using it in the right way. We're also seeing so much discussion of this when it comes to jobs. And that, of course, affects all of us as educators, because our students are out there and going to be getting jobs as well. People are thinking about this all the time. And there's a writer, a technology writer named Daniel Pink, who has a great way of looking at this. He says, AI won't replace humans, but humans using AI will replace humans not using AI. So you can think about that in the context of academia as well, that students are going to be using these tools. They're often using them without an understanding of the ways in which these tools are evolving, the problems with the tools, and where what are next steps, how to use them, properly, how to cite them properly. And this is where we as academics have an obligation to our students to help them understand this as well. So when we think about AI, there's a one way to think about this is through this what's called the 3 waves of AI evolution by Mustafa Suleyman, who is a very senior person in the AI world and at Google, who talks about 3 waves of AI evolution. The first is classification, which basically trains computers to classify various types of images and text. So say this is a tree, this is a car, etc. Right? That's the basic kind of AI. The current wave, which is the generative AI, takes input to create something new. Right? It takes your input and creates something new. ChatGPT is a great example of this. In the future, when there will be the interactive wave, that's where AI will be capable of communicating and operating autonomously. One of the tools you may have seen in some versions of Zoom is that there's a way in which you can, I don't think it's set up in this version for this session, but in Zoom itself has this feature where you can say, summarize, catch me up on what I've missed. You can also say, was my name mentioned? And it will show you where your name was mentioned. What are the to-do lists? What are the task lists? So those are all kind of generative AI options on Zoom, but a future version of this where it would be the AI would operate autonomously, meaning it will be able to go out. Somebody says something, a task needs to be done. It won't be assigned back to Jane. It will just do the assignment and show it to Jane, or even go out with it. That's, of course, 5, 10 years away, maybe, but it shows you that we are in a process of evolution here, and it's not something that this is where we are, and this is exactly how it's going to be. And that has an impact for how you do online teaching or how students are getting the information. We all know about the fuss made around MOOCs and Coursera and edX and all of those tools, and how they were super hyped. And of course, they've had a role to play, but they're not where people had predicted they would be. So those are interesting comparisons to where we are with this kind of technology. And Shao says that it's not enabled in this meeting, but is that available at Hunter, Shao? So what does that mean? So I think that some faculty will be interested in this. So can they turn it on, or is that an administrative level feature that has to be turned on? And what are any implications, Shao, about how you use it?
I once opened a meeting and it was enabled by default. So that really got me very surprised and worried. And so we tried it out with Jack, and then we actually turned it off. So it's not enabled in this meeting, and I don't remember actually how to turn it on, but it is possible. And so it's a scary idea. Right. So Jack is telling us that it was disabled for CUNY accounts, but it's enabled on the Hunter accounts. And, and the difference there is that some of us are using Hunter Zoom accounts, and most of us we all have a CUNY Zoom account. Okay. But some of these meetings, some special ones that the centers are using are on Hunter accounts, and those are the ones that we can enable on.
So that's, if we can just pause there in terms of once students start seeing this, that might also be an expectation, right? If they're attending online sessions or recordings, to have the summary, have the transcript. I mean, I think transcript is already enabled, but having those tools will be something that students look for. Faculty who don't attend an event will want a summary. So my suggestion would be to have a uniform process and policy about turning on this tool. And I'm not exactly sure why there's a difference, right? I mean, I understand the technical reason, but why there's a difference. So I think this should be something that you decide to use or not use, but there will be an expectation from students about this. So I don't know if anyone has a response to that, or Jack or anyone else. Like, So does it just search the chat, or does it search the transcript also? So it really depends on the tool, and Teams, which is another tool for Microsoft, does something else. So it summarizes the chat as the discussion as you're going through it, and it just says catch up, and it picks out the things that it thinks are important. So it isn't just, you know, reading the chat, it's actually picking out what it, depending on what people have said. And so it uses those generative AI tools underlying technology for that. And if anyone has used it, you can see how powerful it can be, but also very distracting. And if students especially start using it as a kind of a to-do list or a homework list or guidance, there will be errors, there will be mistakes. And Xiao is pointing out that it also listens to the conversation, not just the chat. So something for us to be aware of. So thank you for that. And you know, there was some discussion of Grammarly, and as I was saying, you know, AI isn't new. Grammarly has been used for a long time. But what changed was in October 22 when ChatGPT came out, and you can see how different industries have been affected by this. But no industry, I would say, or no area of human knowledge has been as affected as education. We just look here to see different examples of how universities have reacted to the situation, right? The famous example of a professor who attempted to fail many students in his class at the University of Texas in Austin, accusing them of cheating. And it turns out they were not using the tool. And that caused so much embarrassment at the university level that by August of the same year, of last year, they introduced a new AI literacy course for students and faculty. And as you know, it's very hard to get things done over the summer in any school, especially at a big university. But there was so much pushback, so much attention paid to the crisis from that one class, that then it became something that the university had to respond to. And you're seeing how different universities have dealt with this. You know, if you're looking at some of the schools, different faculty have different attitudes towards this. And that's why it'd be interesting to hear from our colleagues here, you know, how are you approaching it and how are you thinking about this, right? You know, so if you have students using a discussion board response, are using one of these tools, then what does that say when in fact students in every survey of them are in fact using these tools? So I know there's a code of conduct and everything else, but this just becomes a default way of using this. And you can see there are other approaches as well. You've seen the University of Michigan, a very big school, and how they have responded to this. So something for us to think about in terms of the implications of this. So this is not some, you know, a professor and a class. This is really has systemic implications for the college, for the university, in these interactions, because also students then share you know, any discipline that they're put under, that's also publicized and goes out there. So I'd love to hear any thoughts on what we've discussed so far, and would like to hear your ideas or viewpoints on this. Roberta says, how does AI, let's say in Zoom, differ from indexing tools that have been used in the judicial system for decades? Is there a difference? Is a difference that AI can also listen? So the way I think about this is, yes, that's one of the ways in which it's different. And when you have tools that can do indexing over, you know, generations or years, decades, those have limits to what they can do automatically and limits to the mistakes that can be made. One of the things you hear with technology, with generative AI, is this idea of hallucinations or mistakes. I think even the word hallucination is a way for these AI tools to be let off the hook, right? By just calling them hallucinations, or calling them mistakes, errors, problems, crises. They're called hallucinations. And the way that these tools work is that they want to stretch, they want to do more than what's in front of them. Perfect example of this is a writer named Julia Angwin. She created a chatbot of just her articles, no one else's articles, nothing else on the internet, because that's what you can do with these chatbots. They don't have to be the entirety of the internet. They can be just very specific sets of documents, very limited sets of content. And even in her own set of articles, the AI was, ChatGPT was putting in hallucinations, mistakes, errors, things that didn't exist, even in this very limited set of things. So imagine what it will do when you're talking about the entire internet, when you're trying to do, these large learning models. And so one of the things that I would urge you all to emphasize as we are learning this, also how the students take this, because the number of mistakes and errors and hallucinations that are creeping up and showing up online are really problematic, and students are copying them, are posting them, are using them in homework. And in one college last fall, this was such a problem that they had to change the way they approach this and really ask students to use some of these tools that are AI detector tools to show them the mistakes that were coming in and the errors that were there. So there's two separate things. One are the mistakes that creep in, and the other is where they are making it clear there are ways to track whether you have used an AI tool or not. And one of the things is that Turnitin, which of course you all know as a plagiarism detector, is also now offering AI detection services using generative AI. And I have not, I don't know what Hunter's policy is on this. So if one of you who does, can you speak on that? Is Turnitin turned on for faculty use? How are you doing it? In some schools, the students have access to it, and they can see the results before it goes into the faculty on any written assignment. What's happening now with all of you?
So we currently do not have Turnitin as a product. We have some Turnitin products, Gradescope and ExamSoft. However, the provost office is in conversation with Turnitin so that we will have Gradescope, ExamSoft, and Turnitin as products available to our faculty. So that's where we are there.
Great, thank you. I will just talk about another piece of technology which just had its anniversary. Wikipedia just celebrated. It was launched in 2001, so it's now 23 years old just yesterday. And one of the things that that happened in universities was that faculty at the beginning were against Wikipedia completely, would not allow students to use it in any fashion. And then faculty realized that there were benefits to Wikipedia. Not everything is perfect on it, obviously, but teaching students to go to the citations, reading the references, and teaching them to go to the primary source of information. I thought that was a very important journey, to use Julie's term earlier, on how faculty adopted to Wikipedia. There are still lots of faculty who don't like it, but you have seen many studies that show that Wikipedia, compared to other big technology companies and platforms, when it came to, say, the elections of 2016, were less harmful, less fake information was there. That doesn't mean there isn't fake information, but that's one of the things that's happening, that Wikipedia kind of stood out in that way. We have a question here about using in-class exams over take-home ones in classes, and I can tell you what I have seen, and then I would ask anyone who has experience in this the pros and cons of that. As you can imagine, having in-person exams means, or tests or quizzes, any of those things means taking away from your teaching time and lecture time. So that's an issue. And having students complete those in person, if you've not planned that already for this semester, it'll be very difficult. But I'd love to hear any of you who have experimented with take-home versus in-person tools. And I should have asked this before, and I'm sorry. Everybody can access ChatGPT and Bard on the CUNY systems, on the systems there. But is there also a difference between the paid services and where we would say ChatGPT 4, for example?
We do not have a paid service.
Okay, so
GPT
that's also
4
one of
or
the
any other
things.
tools.
Yes, so that's one of the questions that has come up in universities and colleges, is the access, the students who can pay for the paid services, pay for those tools, they have an advantage. And so should we look into paying for it across the university, across the college? And have there been any discussions about that? Do you worry about the inequality or the gap, people who can afford to pay the $20 a month for some of these services, or use it just kind of, or share passwords and things like that? Xiao, any thoughts on that? Or
I think you bring up a good point, and I don't know if within departments, and anyone who's had a departmental discussion of that, feel free to chime in. I don't know at Hunter whether any departments have had that discussion, or we certainly haven't had one in the provost office about equity as it relates to the use of more developed ChatGPT or paid for ChatGPT subscriptions. But I think that that's it's an interesting thought, and it's one that we're going to have to start discussing. So I appreciate the fact that you brought that up.
thank you. I just want to show, this was Anthony's presentation about generative AI at the last December CUNY IT conference, and the link is there. So if everyone will please take a look and grab it, I'm sure you will learn a lot. I am bookmarking it as well, so thank you for that, Tony. So this is Tony's thoughts on CUNY IT, so thank you for that. Andrea says, I often hear about the benefits of AI to medicine and such professional fields, and I can see that. But I'm wondering about the speed of time for our arts and sciences, in the sense that ideas and thoughts often need slow time, not fast time to develop. Do AI creators and develop take these more philosophical and psychological things into consideration? Was the volume of knowledge data considered to be efficient as maturation of critical thinking? I have an AI policy on my syllabus that intends to address this issue so that students are allowed to engage with AI, but need to include their assessment of AI's data and AI's output. I think that's really interesting, Andrea. Thank you very much. Anyone has a response to that, please type it up, or if you raise your hand and if we see you, otherwise please speak up. I think this is something that we should be thinking about. Obviously, when you're doing anything that's tech, the companies are just going to keep increasing the speed, and that's going to be the most important thing to them, rather than thinking about this. And I think that's why critical thinking has to be something we continue to reinforce with students when they are looking at AI results, and how they're used, because that's certainly going to be an issue. I'll just show you an example of how Bard took my own bio, and I just asked it, who am I? And everything in yellow is an error. Things that I never did, things awards I never won. I'm not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. I don't enjoy playing the guitar. I don't go hiking maybe more than once a year. I do enjoy spending time with my family, but my family may not agree, and that's another story. But this, I think, encapsulates the problem of the output of these tools. And in another version of this, I was the chief digital officer of University of Southern California. Like things, it just makes it up. When there's already accurate, useful information online, it just decides to make things up because it's constantly pushed to stretch and to give you more information. And so these are examples of, and it's because I know this topic because it's me, but you, I'm sure each of you, as you played with these tools, have seen in your subject areas, in places where you know the topic better than anyone, you have seen these kinds of issues cropping up. And I'd love to hear any thoughts on how we can work with students on this, because what we've been talking about so far are faculty and how to help faculty understand this. But students are the ones who are taking some of this output and using it in our classes, using it in what we're doing. So any thoughts on that, how you're doing it, and what might be the solution? And is there a parallel set of conversations that are being had with students apart from the descriptions in the syllabi? Anybody want to jump in on that? Okay, so one of the things that I would encourage you to do, is to look at your own bios, look at your own content, look at your own papers online, and see how they're being used. One of the ways in which ChatGPT-4 works is that you can take a PDF of several hundred pages and ask it to summarize it for you, and pull out the most important points. And we are seeing people do this on a daily basis. And even with the paid accounts, still omissions, mistakes, exaggerations are very much there. So this is something that we need to be looking at and explaining to the students that just like, in Wikipedia, we use the Wikipedia as a starting place, but we've got to go out and do our own research, do our own writing. That I think is going to be very important for people to understand. Any questions or comments? We have about 10 minutes left, and I'm sure there are some questions I didn't see. Nicole or others, if there are any questions on that we want to tackle.
I would just want to ask a question that was asked by Kelly Anderson.
Sure.
She says that she's put student writing into a ChatGPT detector and it's come up 92% likely as written by AI.
Mm-hmm.
And how does one then approach responding to that with the student? And have you learned about, or do you know about ways in which a faculty member or an institution has responded to those kinds of?
So one of the points that was made in the chat is that the Turnitin AI detector is not turned on in Hunter. And so there are other tools like this that go out. And so this is one of my own essays I took and I put into one of the most popular tools. And it said it's 97% human generated content. And which, even though it's 100% human generated, it thinks it's 97. But what if the professor has a cutoff? And the cutoff is 98% has to be human generated. And this is where there will be discipline issues. There will be back and forth. You could end up in lawsuits, all kinds of things. And that's why when you have these detector tools, which are constantly, they say they're improving, but they still have problems, that they can affect how students are looking at it. So the professor who found that there's a high percentage chance that it was AI, what did you do, and what can you do? I have not seen on any syllabus, and maybe others have, where they've said specifically that if we find this, here are the consequences. of that. And I'd love to hear anybody's thoughts on that.
Well, I'm the one who wrote it. I didn't do anything because I was paralyzed by it. So I guess one question at Hunter is like, is the Office of Academic Integrity like able to weed through these things? And is that what we should be doing? Or I'm also just wondering how to advise, I'm department chair. So part of why I'm here is I think there's a lot of faculty who aren't at the place of using AI in their assignments. They don't even know students are using it to write their papers. So well, it's a little overwhelming.
Sorry, 1 second. So you think that some faculty are not aware that the students are using it for assignments?
Yes, I think that's definitely likely.
Thoughts? And there was a specific question about the the academic integrity office.
I would add that my concern is faculty doesn't realize the extent through which it can be used. I just went there and put in a request to write an exam question, and I'm in awe of what it did at the level of the question that it wrote. I had to add prompts to it, but I'm not sure the faculty is aware of the extent through which students can use it. And as chair, as Kelly said, it's a little overwhelming to think how do we manage this?
So can I ask that question about students? What are we doing for students? Apart from what we're telling them in the syllabi and maybe at the beginning of classes?
I think for now, this is still a conversation every faculty member has currently with their courses. So with their classes.
I agree. I was going to say that I think college-wide, so for all of Hunter College, we're going to have to be rethinking what do certain terms mean to us? What does plagiarism mean? And how do we spend a lot of time sort of explaining to students what plagiarism is when it comes to interactions with human, but it's a different story when you have to explain to them what plagiarism is when it comes to the use of a tool. And that may mean for us that we redefine that word. And Michael has his hand up, which is great. And he may have some comment on what I'm saying or something else we've been talking about. But I think that this really sort of gets to the crux of the issue. Is it an academic integrity issue? To what extent is it an academic integrity issue? And how do we train students to think about things differently? But
am I up? No.
Please.
I agree with what Nicole just said about needing to get clear on conceptually what plagiarism is and things like that. But also, and this will sound naive, probably. I'm almost embarrassed to say it. But I teach in a school of social work, so maybe that's why I'm going to be naive. But I don't know if there is really any kind of technical way to address the problem of student misuse of these things. I'll say misuse. And I mean, we can try come up with policies and things like that. But maybe also there needs to be an appeal to students' sense of ethics and what they want to get out of their education. And given that how different uses of AI might help or take away from that, I mean, like some kind of appeal to a moral sense or ethical sense on the part of students and what they want out of school. And that sounds very naive, I know. But I do try that in social work. I mean, we're supposed to be in social work for certain reasons. It's supposed to be ethical, but I mean, other students may be like that too. Maybe. I mean, I don't. That may sound silly, but I think there should be some place for an appeal to ethics and education and the goals for education, things like that. In addition to other things, like maybe technical things like that. But I mean, I haven't heard that yet brought up, and maybe that should be part of our strategy as well.
Thank you, Michael. And Amber says, I generally resent feeling like I have to be a cop to my students. I want to be a collaborator with them. And that, I think, is what you're also sort of saying, that are there ways we can work with them from a position of not being cops, but helping them understand, as you said, the higher purpose of what they're doing, and how do we do it? There's some interesting discussions about conversations they've had with students, and the students deny that they used it or had, that's where their fear is, because they don't know how to use it. So there was a specific question about, do we have a broad general Hunter level statement that can be added to syllabi? And we have examples that were shown by Xiao earlier in that Padlet. But if it has to be Hunter-wide, Nicole, it would have to come from the Senate. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I would say that I think that that's the kind of thing that's sort of in the works. And I'm hoping that this conversation can launch more conversations so that many of us are thinking about what a generalizable policy should look like. And I'm hoping that more people after this conversation will be aware of the resources that are available, so that when they're thinking about, for the now, if they want to have a classroom policy, where can we look at these carefully curated resources to find out what good examples there are out there, and also who to go to, as we mentioned earlier, to talk to Xiao and Julie and even Jack, our resident expert on ChatGPT, to learn about how we might approach the use of these tools in our classrooms.
Thank you. There was a very specific question about bias in these algorithms. And I just want to say, just as an example, and then we can close with this, is here is someone, the student, a student at MIT took her headshot and put it into one of these algorithms that says they will improve the quality of the headshot, make it better. And you can see what they did. They lightened her skin, gave her blue eyes, and changed her hair. And this is an example of the fact that these are human beings who are training these tools, and what they're trained on is what then comes out on the other end. And so there's lots of writing about this, and I'm sure some of the resources there, we can add more to those resources, but it's something that we definitely need to show people, to show students that this is what is happening when you go on these tools that generate images, for example. Bias is a real issue that we need to think about. Questions. Victoria says, I had a graduate student turn in a paper that came back 100% AI generated. I gave the student a chance to rewrite the paper. It was extremely time consuming and stressful deciding what to do. And this is where I think those policy statements or the Senate doing something can be helpful. I made a mandatory drop-in office hours for every student in my class, where I asked them face-to-face to discuss what they're intending to write about. Or for informal oral exam. That's very interesting. Not possible for every professor at scale. Jorge says, I've been telling students to limit the discussion to the assigned sources only. It's not ideal when I ask them to cite works that contradict their point of view. My problem with Tracy says, my problem with AI is not whether the data is true. I'm trying to assess my students' understanding and skills. How can I do that if they're asking a computer to deliberately disguise their own ability? Yeah, that's part of the issue here. Debbie suggests you might have them generate it on ChatGPT and then revise it and judge it as a follow-up assignment to see which one was better. Maybe that could be to do that. Catherine says people fixate on writing, but these tools actually produce discussion questions and outline lists. Effective prompts change the output. And one of the things that I'll also say why students can, what this part of what Michael was talking about, is that one of the skills of the 21st century is going to be prompt writing, what they call prompt engineering, the ability to write smart, useful prompts. And so if we can teach that in class, that would also be helpful. So instead of, just saying this is all terrible, how do we use it? And showing them that their understanding of these tools will help them in their in wherever they go to work, in whatever field they're in. It will make a difference. Nicole, shall I hand it back to you? I know we had so many more questions that we didn't get through, but I can hand it back to you or Julie and take it from there.
I'll just say that, again, this is sort of the beginning of a conversation. Sree's going to join us again in March to have a follow-up conversation with faculty about the use of ChatGPT and other generative AI tools in the classroom. And so in the intervening time, we're going to be having discussions with all the chairs. And again, we just hope that this will be the beginning of a, time for us to think of, yes, policy, the variety of uses. Again, I encourage you to take a look, if you haven't, at the curated resources provided by the Center of Online Learning and ASSERT. And I would also like to just encourage you to talk with your colleagues in your department and outside of the department. I think the more conversation, the more thought we have about this right now, the better. What we want to do is be prepared for what Sree has so astutely shown us, which is that, this is not going away. Generative AI will soon evolve, and we want to be able to think about the future as we make our policies and our practices for today. So I want to thank Sree for joining us. I want to thank everyone who's logged into the call for joining us, and hopefully again, this will start the conversation. So thank you very much, Sree.